Welcome back to another episode of the Passion in Motion podcast. I am your host, Muta, and today I am joined by Jack Begadu, also known on social media and around the whiskey circle as Hood Sommelier. And yeah, welcome, Jack.
Thank
Please
you,
say hello to
thank
the
you,
fellow
thank you
people out
for
there.
having me.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. It's great to have you. So Jack, actually, yeah, would you like to give people maybe a brief spiel about yourself?
My name is Jack Vigadu, but legally known as Toyi Vigadu. Born and raised in West Africa. Togo specifically is the country. I came to the US when I was about 20-year-old to pursue my education. Started in computer science, obviously, because you can only be, three type of things in an African family. I wanted to be a computer engineer because you got to have engineer or doctor.
Yeah.
But my fate didn't go that way. I'm a theater kid and a choir kid, so talking to people is something I really wanted. So obviously coming here, natural immigrant difficulty, hard to pay for school and whatnot. So I found myself drawn to jobs that actually involve talking a lot. So I ended up, working a gas station, becoming a manager of that gas station for the longest time. And as fate will have it, I had somebody that walked in my life that gave me an opportunity. They saw me at the gas station, told me, there's something about you. You're good at talking to people. You're good at, almost upselling people. Make sure that you come see me. I've dodged them a few times because I hate multi-level marketing people. The hardest lesson I had to learn in American deal. But he was insistent and he brought me in and he promised me a year of salary to work for him. And if I didn't do well, he'll pay me back another year just to go look for another job. So that gave me the faith to go back and work for him. But as fate will have it, this person changed my life. I started working for him in his insurance industry as just a salesman for him. And quickly, I found myself doing very well in sales, protecting people. I've realized there was a major gap in the African community when it came to insurance education, when it came to people learning just how to protect themselves. And for the last 15 years, I've been in insurance, helping immigrant communities all around the U.S. So today, I'm part owner of an independent agency called Sommelier Insurance Services, where we actually are majority black owned to go around the U.S. and educate business owners and you know people from all walks of life. My target is always immigrants about the importance of protecting their businesses, themselves, and their livelihood. So on a day-to-day basis, that's what I do. When you're in a business, there's something that happens is you start finding out what they call circle of influences. You want to meet more people. You want to have people that can refer business to you. One of the places, and especially in the financial world, is usually golfing. Golfing is when you meet people. Also, golfing is when most people tell you things that they'll never tell anybody. And golfing is where everybody have a little bit of libation. And that's also one of the things that happen on the golf course. Now, disclaimer, I'm a terrible golfer. So the one thing I always bought on a golf course is a little bit of libation, a little bit of little things to make myself interesting. And that have to do with my own ability to being around a family where good spirits was kind of a cool thing to have. You want your guests to feel comfortable around you. You bring them a good bottle. That became a thing. It became more where I passed my time realizing that I was the most interesting guy on a golf course because I always bring something new and I get to tell people the story of it. Like, oh, this is a bottle of Johnny Walker Green. My mentor gave it to me, and all these things where I felt like more people were drawn to me, even though my golf game was terrible. They were more drawn to me. And just as a passion project, I started digging more. Coming from Africa, obviously, we are influenced by the colonial wave. So, a single malt wine are the two things are the prolific thing that we see more on table or celebration. But one of the things I will, as fate will have it, one of the things I will realize is that spirits have a deeper connection to us, the world, and also a deeper connection to uh, Africa itself. And somewhere it became a little bit of that passion project, because obviously everybody tell you need to have more than one source of income. And also, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I love insurance. I can do it in my sleep, but I felt like there was this gap in me where I could do more. When all my friends were running to say, "Oh, we're gonna do real estate, or we're gonna do this," I'm like, I think I'm gonna do whiskey. And as the odd kid again, you know, same way as it happened in college when everybody was in computer science and that, I'm like, oh, I want to do business administration, because I was in. But quickly, I didn't know how big you'll get. I will tell you today, I'm forever grateful, because today, this became more real a year before the pandemic, where I started posting on Facebook and started posting a little bit of Instagram, and people will comment and people will like it and people will come and say things. I'm like, is this that interesting? Are people really that interested about this? And 5 years later today, I think combined, I'm holding probably on all my platform combined over 100,000 people that follow me. I get invited in rooms where I'm usually one of the few African or Black person to either do sensory experiences where I bring my experience in African view and African American view of the spirit when it comes to sensory, or dinners, when we bring our culture, our food to combine with the word of whiskey. When I bring those things together, and more and more, as hard as it may be, I get opportunities to try things that no one can ever dream to have, because I decided to take a chance. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow, that's actually a really interesting story because it's sort of like you set out to be in the whiskey world, right? It's also funny how the just life works. Like you start in one thing, like you have, and like you said, coming from Africa, our parents have many expectations of us. Especially when you're going to America, it's like, okay, you're going to America, you're gonna be whatever, and then you get there, and then you also have your own dreams and passions, and to go from there to say, okay, I'm gonna do this work in this place, and then for someone to walk in and be like, hey, I recognize something in you, come work for me, and that just changes your whole life, and like it just sets you on a path that you didn't even know for yourself. So I love that life works that way. And the fact that you're saying, just even your introduction to whiskey because you're playing golf, because of all this, and I feel like you're also at you are kind of like a unicorn in this space, since number one, you're African, you're an immigrant, you're in America, you're a whiskey sommelier, you do all this, because I know that in terms of the sommelier world, there are not that many Black people in general. They're not that many. And then if you think about Africans, it's probably like, I'm sure they're like less than 1,000 in the world, right? And so, yeah, you're probably like one of the very, very few intersectional whiskey sommeliers out there.
I
Probably,
believe I
yeah,
actually represent Africa as a whole, right? The only thing missing is I'm not a woman.
yeah.
That's all. But Africa as a whole, that is really truly my final venture will be to take everything I've learned in America and just take it on to Africa. Now we have to be clear and to be fair. There are a lot of wine sommeliers that are coming out. The most actually famous and top notch wine sommeliers come actually from East Africa and East and South Africa. Those people have the best palate in the industry. They've won more award than anybody. So I cannot take away from those, because there was a documentary that came out. There's of three South African and one Kenyan, I believe. That's the world top palate in wine. They get invited around the world when it comes to wine competition. And these kids
Wow.
are, this guys are South African. So you may want to look
Wow.
into that as well when it comes to the wine. Those are real, what the world considers sommelier. We are the junkie people that want to get the title of sommelier when it comes to whiskey, because whiskeys have what they call deep set. So to become expert in spirits or in wine, you go through an exam that is called a WSET exam. So wine spirit education training. And on that level, you get level one, level two, level three, and you become a deep set. Me, I'm a level two in W set or in spirits. I also have a specific, like, I went niche into learning more about a certification in single malt, a certification in, what do you call it, in Irish whiskey, a certification in tequila, right? So I've done specific thing to actually sharpen my own, tool bag. But I'm never gonna take away for African people that are on top of the, what I'm talking, top palette of wine tasting. Now, I represent Africa as a whole wine. I don't discriminate against wine. I know a little bit about wine, but I will never call myself an expert. I speak French, which is a major language in Africa. I speak English, which is the second, top major language in Africa. I represent the black, people and I represent the typical immigrant story that African born went to another country. Let's give it up as well to African people from Ghana. I know a couple people from, like, there's a man called Colin Apia. He really inspires me. Colin is one of the first people to install a bartender education in West Africa, in South Africa. It's happening right now, even as we speak, called the Ajuba Festival in South Africa, where he's taken everything he's learned. He's worked for Bacardi, one of the first African people to work in the industry of Bacardi. He was in London. He ran the bar scene in London. He ran the bar scene
Wow.
in America, and he took that and now taking it back to Johannesburg and Cape Town and all these places that have like fancy hotel. You don't understand how hard it is to actually go and order an old fashioned in Africa and expect the old fashioned you've had everywhere around the world. So he's changing that by bringing that culture in. But the major thing he's doing is, how about we take Africa ingredient and make cocktails that are high top cocktails in the world, right? So those are things that I've talked to him, work with uh, names like John Kaguru, this guy that goes around. He's African, most South African American you've ever met in your life. Who is this man that goes around and collect bartender tools every year all around America just to take back to Africa to donate to bartenders? Our bartenders have no tools. They don't even know
Mm.
anything. So I'm hoping Mike Mayfield, when I talk to Colin, I say, Colin, you got the bartenders. John got the tools and the back bar. I want to bring education. I want to teach people what is single malt. Why is this called bourbon? Why is this called Irish whiskey? Why do they call it tequila? How is it made? So the bartender now normally know how to make the spirit, know how to actually use the tools, but they also educated on which type of spirit they're serving. So that is my ultimate goal.
No, I love that, and thank you for shedding a light on all these other Africans who are also in the space doing good things, big things. I didn't even know about this, and I actually want to like do a deep dive about these people like later. So
I can
I'm
I
gonna reach
can
out to you for
connect
their
you.
names.
I will connect you to
Yeah,
John. John is probably the first person you want to talk to, and Colin after that, because John, this year, this year in January, John, when I spoke to him, how West Africa is a little forgotten when it comes to the word of bartending and education,
yeah.
and without hesitation, this man asked me, "What do you have as resources?" So I had a couple friend, one major bartender in Canada, and another one in Togo, and they did the Azizo. You can look it up, the Azizo Festival, which they actually help with the bartenders.
Hmm.
This man flew from California down to Togo with all the
Wow.
tools, came down and held this bartender competition just to lift the spirit of these bartenders and let them know that you're not forgotten if their resources will help out. So it tells you the commitment that people have to make Africa better when it comes to the spirit world as a whole.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to talk to him about this. Like, that would be such a great conversation to have because, yeah, I think, yeah, no, that would be awesome. I would love to have him on the platform to talk
I will
more about
connect
that.
you. I
Actually,
definitely will connect you to him. Yeah.
yeah, no, that'd be awesome. So as you're talking about the education of whiskey, so for me personally, I wouldn't say I know too much about whiskey. That's not like my preferred. Well, I just have never gotten into it. But my father-in-law and my wife's family, they love whiskey, and that was actually the first introduction because as part of the dowry, I had to get him what is it Glenfiddich. I think was it a 12 year
A 12-year,
one.
yeah. Glenfiddich
Yeah, the
12-year,
12 year
yeah.
Glenfiddich. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, I'm going to teach you how to drink this. And then he like, and I was surprised, like, wow, this is actually way better than I thought. Like, it tastes so good. I was
Right.
surprised. So,
But also, you that's where I was saying that spirits have been part of African culture or our culture way longer we knew, right? When it comes to
yeah,
celebration, we always have spirit. Either it could be gin, it could be the local moonshine, or it's something foreign like a single malt, right? But even you bring in the bright price or the dowries in any culture, if no matter what you bring in from the local brew, right? To the local moonshine, you have to have a spirit in there because the ancestors need that spirit to uplift them. Right? If you understand the history of whiskey, right, or spirits as a whole, you remote into religion, it remote into belief.
yeah.
Spirits were never made for consumption. The reason why it's called spirit is supposed to lift you. It's supposed to
Mm,
heal the inside and the outside of the body. In the old days, spirits were made, or moonshine or alcohol was made to actually help warriors that came from war, and the monk will actually use that to heal their wound.
oh,
It
yeah,
was never meant to get drunk on. Even religious writing will tell you that this was meant to heal the inside and the outside of the body. So when you're using those, is to actually uplift the people, bring the ancestors to lift their spirit so they can be in cohesion with you as a person. So I didn't understand before, why is it that growing up in Africa, you're like, why is that as part of the bride price they're asking for gin? You need to bring one foreign something and one foreign. I'm
mm,
like, I remember I seen my aunt, my cousin get married. I'm like, it's the same thing, right? Beside the cloth, the shoes, and all these, you got to have some sort of spirit in it. It doesn't matter.
exactly.
So that remote back to from the colonial way to our old ways has always been the same. But
That's so
as you
interesting.
mentioned, education for me has been the forefront always of my vision when it comes to industry. When it comes to great palate, I'm good. I judge competitions of whiskey, but I don't consider myself the best palate in America. I consider myself the most interesting palate because if somebody's tasting whiskey and they're telling me, "Oh, I get spice, I get this," I'm like, I think this is more clove, star anise. This is ginger. This so because I have a different palate. I grew up in a different. I eat different food. So those are things that I think education wise is really important to bring to other people in the industry.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, it's actually so interesting about all of it. Yeah, I think there's a lot of history that would be good to learn about that. But so in terms of like the types of whiskey, like, so how I've always wondered, so what's the difference when you say, okay, this is a single malt whiskey, this is a, I don't know if there's double malt. I always say, like, I'm always like, what's this malt thing, what does that mean, and which malt is better, like, which does a malt, like the lower malt, does that mean it's the best? Is it like the third malt, triple distilled? I have no idea. So
So,
what does
so
that all
that's
mean?
that's probably the best question that I get often, and it also has to do with people understanding it. So, I'm gonna teach you three things that you need to
Okay.
just retain. Right now, remember, saying whiskey is like saying humans. Whiskey is a category, right? Whiskey is
Mm,
like a global thing, as you're saying whiskey. In whiskey, for anything to be called whiskey, it has to have three things. It has to be made with some sort of grain. It doesn't matter which type of, which type of grain, some sort of grain. Added water and yeast, right? Water and yeast has mixed in it, has been fermented and distilled, right?
Mm.
And have been aged in some sort of wood container. You call that whiskey. Now, depending on the type of grain, the type of fermentation, the type of distilling, and the location where it's done, that's where you give it a specific name. So it's like somebody coming and say, "Oh, these are humans." You're like, "Yeah, but what type of human?" Or this is a woman. This is a man. You're like, okay, what type of woman, what type of man? Or this is an African woman. This is a white woman. This is a black man. It's like, okay, what type of black man is it? Or this is an African black man. That's how it works. So when you say whiskey, you're just saying these are humans. But depending on
Mm.
those little specific, it make a difference. So as a simple breakdown, most whiskeys just come into there is 13 different main zone of whiskey. That's how I teach my whiskeys from around the world. Because depending on where in the world it's made, it may be a different thing. But it can also find itself in the same category. The same way I say human, we come to women. All whiskeys from around the world can be women. But then it can be an Irish woman or an African woman, right? So
Yeah.
if you come down to it, say whiskey, perfect. Now, what type of whiskey are there? First category is be America, the youngest country in the world. It will be bourbon. Bourbon can only be made in America. Bourbon is a type of whiskey. It can only be made in America.
Mm.
Scotch. Scotch can only be made in Scotland. Irish whiskey. Irish whiskey can only be made in Ireland. Japanese whiskey. Japanese whiskey can only be made in Japan. Right? That's location. That's all 100% location based. All location based. Now we
Why? Why
come
is that? What do you mean
be,
by that? Like what?
so
Like
so
it can only be made. Why? Why? Is
correct,
that like
because
just?
country first is money.
Mm.
Because if you put a specific connotation on a specific whiskey that it can be only made in a place, that means that when that whiskey comes out of that country, you can get export taxes on that, right?
Ah.
Right.
Okay.
Also, there's pride. You want to say that this can only be made in my country because you have that pride of that country. You're proud of the grain you use in that country and the style of whiskey you make in that country.
Mm.
Right. Three is recognition. You want your name all around the world. You make sure your spirit only comes from where you're from. So no one else in the world can repeat that. But
That
number
makes sense.
one, it's economics. Always. It's always about the money sign, right?
Yeah.
So if you say you're making whiskey, you know, you say bourbon in America. We say it can only be made here. There's a rule around bourbon. Bourbon says that if you say you're going to make bourbon in America, the type of grain matters. You can only make it in the mash bill, what they call the mash bill of grain you're going to use has to have 51% of that mash bill of grain have to be 51% of it have to be corn. If it's not that, you cannot call it bourbon. You have to distill it at a certain percentage. It can be over a certain proof of alcohol. You have to put it in a barrel. It cannot be under a certain proof of alcohol. And when you bottle it, it cannot be under a certain proof of alcohol either. And it has to be made somewhere in this United States of America to be called bourbon. All right.
Wow.
That's why it's called bourbon. If we move to the oldest country in the world and we go to Ireland, where distilling had been known to start in the early 1400s, Irish whiskey has its regulation as well. You can make it with any grain you want, but you have to either use column steel or pot steel. You have to be aged for a minimum of 3 years. If it's not 3 year mature, you can't call it, and it has to be mature in Ireland. So they have their rules as well. They're more relaxed. Scotch. Now let's come to Scotch. When it comes to Scotch, which we know because we are colonized by the English and the
Yeah.
French, when it comes to Scotch, Scotch divides itself in two. You have single malt Scotch and blended Scotch. The oldest Scotch in the world is the man who walked with a cane, Johnny Walker. Right? We've seen Johnny Walker since we were a little kid, even in Africa. Right? So that's a
Yeah.
blended Scotch. What that means simply is that people can take whiskeys made for different distillery and blend it together to make a whiskey. So that's why you see a blended Scotch, but it still have been made with grain, mature, and mature and bottled in Scotland to be called Scotch.
Wow.
Single malt Scotch, the most popular category in the world, right? Single malt Scotch. People always say, what does that mean, single malt? Single
Yeah.
malt simply mean that it comes from one distillery. That's all he means.
Oh, that's
I
it.
know, I know. It's very shocking, but I know.
I thought it had like because of the taste, is like a single grain or something was a single. That's it.
And and the
Oh.
mash bill of the grain, right, has to be 100% barley. 100% barley. It can be any
Mm,
other grain. It has to be made with 100% barley. Now, why is it you hear the word malted? What does that mean? So
yeah.
I refer this to, do you guys have sorghum beer? When you were growing up, did you see how they make sorghum beer in Africa? Or the local
Because I'm
beer
from
in Africa?
Southern. Sorghum. Did we use sorghum beer? They might. Maybe I think they used. Honestly, I'm not too sure if they used corn or if they used sorghum, but I'm sure there's a process.
My grandmother used to make sorghum beer, right? That's how I seen how
Mm,
they make, like, well, how, first, my first experience to alcohol. I was 3 years old. She would make sorghum
yeah.
beer and hog meat. That's what the workers will come and eat when they come from work. They will stop by my
Yeah.
grandma's house and they have their beer and their meat. Either it's deer meat or hog meat. That's all she did my whole life. May she rest in peace. To to become malted, when the barley, right, or the grain comes in, they wet the grain. They have
Mm,
a room that is called a malting room. That room usually is a neutral temperature, where they actually will wet the grain. It's almost like washing that grain. In Africa, they wash the sorghum and then they'll lay it flat all around the room. Now, here is what happened. When you have water on any grain and you put it in a natural environment, it start germinating.
mm-hmm.
The germination of that grain is called malting. The reason why the germination is important is because those grain are hard enough, and the sucrose that they need, sugar, give us alcohol fermentation. To be able to unlock that sucrose in the grain, need to break its shell and start germinating, but they don't let it fully germinate. Once it start peeking out, where it start using those sugars to be able to grow, they stop the germination by increasing the heat and drying it
Mm,
out. So that is called a malted barley. That barley now is no longer regular barley, it is malted now. From there, they will grind it, and add it to water, and they will add yeast to that. And that's called that the yeast does one thing. It eats the sugar and it poop alcohol out. That's literally the role of the yeast. So some people in the old days they use natural fermentation, where they open thing because yeast is everywhere. But now in most distillery they will use actually top fermentation, where they will add yeast into it. Some people have proprietary yeast that they will use because the yeast also determine some of the flavors that come out of the alcohol. Some people are very serious about the yeast that comes in. And from there,
mm,
when that yeast literally eat all of it, and the fermentation is done. That is called a distiller beer, or in some places called a wash. That wash
Mm.
now is distilled, depending on the style of distillation, on a pot still or on a column still, to give you the type of alcohol you get. So when you hear single malt, it just means two things: 100% malted barley from one distillery. That's all. That's all.
Interesting. Is that does that make the best whiskey then? Is that why is that like the most delicious? Like, okay, single malt is always the best type, or
It depends on where you are from in the world. Now,
uh,
yeah, because an American will tell you bourbon is the best thing they like, right? And
mm,
somebody from Europe or Africa will be like, single malt is the best, right?
mm,
Somebody from Ireland will tell you Irish whiskey is the best. I'm privileged enough that I've tried enough whiskeys around the world. That's why I teach whiskeys from around the world. Taiwan make whiskey.
oh,
New Zealand makes whiskey. Australia make their own whiskey, right? So now I just about 2 months ago I found out Lebanon make their whiskey.
wow,
Israel have the land of milk and honey, make their own whiskey, right?
mm,
So depending on anywhere you are in the world, you find different type of whiskey. I used to travel for food. I travel literally for scenery and food, but food was always the first thing on my mind when I go to a foreign country. The last 5 years, I travel to find what type of distillery you have here. Do you make your own whiskey? Right? That's how I found out Hawaiian people make rum. They use sugarcane on the island and make rum. I didn't know that. But
yeah, I
every
didn't know
time I
that either.
go to a new place, I will look up if they have a distillery just to go visit to see what are they doing differently. So those are things
Mm,
that are the world of whiskey is growing, is vast, and is growing fast. And every country is in the race to make the best whiskey possible and put it out there in the world. So you as a person have to kind of let your own palate go on an adventure. So, most people would do tastings. I think that's what makes me different. When people want to hold a tasting that is in my field, people would do single malt, or scotch. People would do bourbon, different type of bourbon. When a client call me and say, hey, corporation, big client, private party, like, hey, we want to do a tasting. I always tell them, are you ready to go on an adventure? They're like, what? I say,
mm,
let me take you and your friend on an adventure. Let's open up your world completely, and you'll be surprised the amount of people that go, you know what? I think I'm a Japanese whiskey person. I thought I
mm,
only like bourbon, but I like Japanese whiskey. Or you hear people go, nah, I thought single malt scotch was crazy, but I think I'm a single malt scotch person now. Or you go, people say, I don't like bourbon. I've never had, I'm a cognac person. Oh, okay. And then those same people will turn and go, I'm definitely a bourbon person. So it's just, not everybody get the opportunity to try a lot of things. But when you get that opportunity to say, hey, let's start with the history of the world. Let's go back to those monks that were making this whiskey just to actually heal people. Let's start in Ireland. Oh, religious war. They moved to Scotland. They started making Scotch whiskey there. From there, colonization. They start taking the distilling in other places. Let's move on to 400 years ago, when this guy named Christopher Columbus going to India, found this continent
mm-hmm,
called America, and everybody else that came with that. Let's talk about the slave, the triangle of trade. What are things that were traded in the world that actually made sense? Then it comes to America, start making bourbon. Or those people in America, persecution, move a little bit north to go to Canada. Now they start making Canadian whiskey. You know what? So we are traveling while learning around the world, but understanding how the migration of people have affected the making of whiskey. Because in
mm,
every single person, I even tell people, even in every single jail, there is one distiller. There's a guy who's making toilet moonshine or
Yeah.
toilet, moonshine somewhere, because it's the same way everywhere in the world where people are taking that skill of learning how to make whiskey and moving with them, but adapting to the new environment that they're in.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So, in your, maybe this would be a difficult question to ask, but in your own professional and personal opinion, which region for you do you feel like actually makes the best whiskey? Like, is it American, Irish? Is it Japanese? Is it Canadian? In your, maybe it's your personal favorite region. Which way do you say, yeah, these guys really know what they're doing?
But if you based my answer just based on what you previously heard from me, it depends on the
Yeah,
type of region you're
exactly.
from, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah,
example, I will go with what I know. African people,
yeah,
we eat
yeah.
spicy food. We love
Mm-hmm.
spicy food. So there's no way we can take a spicy food with bold flavors, right? So African
Mm-hmm.
people, spicy food work with single malt. Why? Single malt is softer, is a little sweeter, is easier for
Yeah.
us to consume, right? But I found out that some African food may literally work with some bourbon that are much like younger and softer, because bourbon is made with corn. Corn is sweeter, but it's not necessarily just Jack Daniel, right? Because that's all we know in Africa is Jack Daniel. But the word of
Yeah.
bourbon is so vast, is what you find that pairs. But I think the choice of whiskey is 100% based on your choice of
Okay.
your personality.
Yeah.
Are you into softer, sweet things? So when someone walked to me today and go, I want to try whiskey. Okay. What type of flavor are you looking for? Oh, I don't want anything strong. Okay. Then we staying below 45% alcohol. Okay, what else? Oh, I like sweet things. Okay. Or somebody say, I like spicy thing. Okay. All right. So you'd say, I like spicy thing. Maybe let's get you into a Canadian rye. Rye is much spicier. Or I just want something sweet. Somebody go, I want to feel it like it was one of those moonshine from back home. One of those,
Yeah.
okay. So let's get you some castrant bourbon. Somebody go, you know what? I just want something chill, relax. I don't need anything crazy. All right. Let me get you a single malt that is much smoother, sleeker, and is more don't have that high proof. It's really about personality. When people say, what do you drink every day? I said, it depends on my mood. If I'm in the
Mm.
mood to just chill, listen to some music and just chill, I'm pouring myself a single malt. But if I'm working and I have to return email and tap something and I'm hyped, I'm pouring myself some bourbon. If
Oh.
I'm out there in the heat of summer and want to try something, I'm going for Japanese whiskey or Irish whiskey because they're lighter. They don't have that punch in the throat. They're more
Mm.
citrusy. They're more like brighter notes. So it's
Mm.
really depend on the environment, your mood, where you are, what you do is what you
Wow.
try. Yeah, there's no there. I don't believe personally there's a whiskey that is superior to another ever, because everyone have their own specialty and category where the fit, they'll fit perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say, so in your opinion then, when they say, all right, Jack, what are your top five go-to whiskeys that you say, like, just like the bottle, like, which are your top five? These are, I love these five for you personally, like your five personal favorites.
Top five. My top five change every year. The reason why it
Mm.
changes every year because I get a chance to try newer whiskey, and then I go shut the door. I have a new top five now, right? And that's obviously me, my privilege, because not everybody get a chance to try everything. But
Yeah.
I will answer your question this way. Somebody says to me, "You only can drink five whiskey for the rest of your life. You can't change it. That's all you're gonna drink."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will walk in and go, "Okay." I will say, me personally, I like what they call peated whiskey. And peated whiskey only come from one place. African people love peated whiskey. Come from Scotland in a region called Islay. But if you look on any bottle that say Islay, Islay, that's a specific
Mm-hmm.
type of whiskey. They use peat. Those are the whiskey that smell like iodine, like an ashtray. It's almost like it's very peated. That's the Lagavulin of the world. That's the Ardbeg. That's Lafroig. We go to an African party, you say that that's a peated whiskey. It has a specific smell. I love those type of whiskey. That is me. So I'll probably go Octomore from Bruichladdich in Isla. I need that. I want that in my top five always.
Okay.
Second whiskey I will want, I say give me some Parker's Heritage, which is, in my opinion, one of the best bourbons produced out of Heaven Hill
Mm.
in Bardstown, Kentucky. Right? Give me that. I need that in my top five. Then
Mm.
I need I need immediately somebody to go to Japan and get me a Hibiki or a Yamazaki 21-year old. I need that. And that's almost $1,000 bottle, but I need that,
Wow.
right? That's one
Wow.
of those bottles, right? Then I want someone to go to Australia and get me some Star Wars single cask
Mm.
Australian whiskey. I need that. I want that in my in my number four, and number five, I need someone to go little to Ireland and get me a 17 or 21-year Irishman single cask sherry and put that in front of me. I need those five. I can drink those any day, anytime, with no hesitation. Right? Those are like, if
Wow.
somebody asks me again, my palate is very diverse. So what that means is I
Yeah.
literally need that Australian, that Japanese, that that American, that Isla from Scotland, and so my palate is very diverse. But for me, that'll be the five whiskeys I need to hold next to me at all time. If that's the only whiskey I get to drink for the rest of my life and press my friends wanna give me those five, I'll be happy.
I love that. I love that. Actually, so one question, well, a couple. So what, the one question that I usually have about whiskey is that I know there are different ages. Like, oh, this is a 21-year-old, this is a 12-year-old, this is a 15-year-old. Does the age of a whiskey, does that always mean the older it is, the better it tastes? Is that the standard? Okay, because that's always a question I have. Like, oh, I don't know this person. Let me buy you a good whiskey. Let me get you the 21-year-old because I feel like it's better than the 12-year-old. But I've heard, you know, reports that some people say I prefer the 12 to the 15, and I'm like, oh,
Correct.
that's interesting.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think that question is a little tricky depending on what you're getting. Now,
Mm.
to answer that question, I want you to understand how whiskey maturation works.
Okay.
So, when a whiskey is put in a barrel, the barrel goes through a transformation. The whiskey
Mm.
barrels are made out of wood. For the whiskey to mature, it needs a fluctuation of temperature. When the temperature is hot, right? Higher temperatures mean that the wood opens up, whiskey goes in. When it get
Mm.
cold, wood shrink, whiskey come out. So what it does is take away the congeners, well, the kind of nasty things that may come out of whiskey. And the older it is in the barrel, right, the more is going the in and out thing. Now, compared to an American whiskey and maybe a Scottish whiskey, temperatures in America are extreme. We get winter,
Yeah.
we get hot summers. Contrary to
Mm-hmm.
Scotland, where the temperature's kind of mild all year long. It rains a little bit of sun, and that's it. The quicker, right, the more temperature fluctuation, that means the faster your whiskey is maturing. Faster. Which means if someone is making whiskey in Texas, which is so hot,
Yeah.
in 3 years, the whiskey will have went through the circle of maturation that it takes a whiskey 20 years in Scotland,
Mm. Wow. That's crazy.
right? So what happens then is you have to understand two things are happening. In Scotland, the rule says if you take your whiskey after 10 years, maturing here, and you move it to a different barrel, type of barrel, and let it continue maturation, the age continues. So if you see a 17-year-old whiskey, if you read on it, they may say it has been matured in X bourbon cask, an old bourbon cask. Then it was matured maybe in sherry cask, in wine cask, or mature in. That's because it continued its life into there. But in America, you can't do that. You can't do that. If you take it out, put another barrel, the age doesn't continue. You can say it was been finished in something, but you can't say it's 10 years old or it's 15 years old because just say it's 10 years old, that means you've dumped it out. If you finish it somewhere, it doesn't matter. It's just 10 years old.
Yeah.
Now, why is it that an average single malt scotch is averagely 12 years old? It takes that long for it to at least have some color and some maturation. It takes that long. Right? Now, depending on the type of cask it was put while it's maturing, that would determine the flavor. So if you have a 15-year-old Glenfiddich versus a 12-year-old Glenfiddich, most 12-year-old Glenfiddich maybe have done, versus a 21-year-old Glenfiddich. Those three have been through the same thing, but one spent more time in a different type of cask than others. If you put the color in front of the color is slightly different, not major. Because even after 5 more years in maturation, because the temperature didn't fluctuate that much. But when it comes to scotch, for example, is the type of cask. I look in the scotch, I'm like, oh, I like scotch that were maturing wine cask in Pedro Jimenez or sherry or that. Or I like wine that use ex-bourbon cask. So that's what determined the flavor. Age, it's really, really a matter of speaking. It's just a little deeper flavor that you get in age. But that doesn't
Okay.
mean necessarily that I'm drinking a 15-year that went through 3 casks and you drinking a 21-year that went through only 1 cask. Maybe that your 21-year may be better than my 15-year. Because there may be some variance of flavors in my 21, my 15 that is not in your 21. There may be a deeper wood effect in your 21 that is not in my 15. Now, why is it that age impact price?
Yeah.
Once you put whiskey in a barrel, guess what the government says? You got to pay me taxes on it, either yearly or when you dump it out for how many years you age. Over 60 to 70% of the money you're paying for your whiskey goes toward tax more than the whiskey itself.
Wow.
A lot of people don't think about that. So
Wow.
when you
Yeah, I
spend
didn't even
more
know that the
time,
government. Yeah.
oh no, during the war in America, I want to say the Civil War, they financed most of the soldiers with spirit money. Our government taxes what over 50 to 60% on all production of alcohol. Same thing for the SWA in Scotland. The same thing for everywhere in the world, even the Japanese government. You making whiskey mean that the government is going to come in and ask you for money always. So when you sit, I've been privileged to sit around distillers, master blender, master distillers, and when they're telling you about their journey in whiskey, they're not out here making stupid money. They're not out here. There is so much rules around alcohol. Africa is the only place where we get a free fall sometime. But when you're in America, do you know that most distillers cannot just sell you whiskey? You can't just go. Let's say you go to Costco today and you see a bottle of bourbon, for example, and it's $45.
Yeah.
You cannot go to the distillery and just go, well, since you guys are making it here, I'm sure it's cheaper. Can I buy it directly from you? You can't do that. The government has set up what they call a three-tier system. When someone make whiskey in their own distillery, they can't just sell it to you. Even if they have a gift shop, it has to go from the
Oh,
distillery to a distribution company, and that distribution company is the one who distribute to the retailers like your your local store, your Costco of the world, and that goes to a retailer
yeah.
before it comes to you. What that means is a distillery themselves have to have a gift shop that is clear by distribution. So, I mean, you make whiskey here,
Hmm.
it's $20. You give it back to the distributor, who give it back to you and say, now it's going to be $40 because we need our money out of it. We need our taxes paid out of it. It doesn't just happen that way. So there's so many rules around alcohol. People only think, oh, you got to be 21 to drink, or in Europe, you got to be
Yeah.
18 to drink. Import tax. That's why this subject that is coming here about tariff is scaring distillers. It is scaring people
Mm.
because that's one more cut or one more obligation out of your profit margin, and
Wow.
most people can afford it.
Yeah. Wow. Because yeah, that's the other thing where like someone sometimes you wonder like, oh, the more expensive the bottle of whiskey is, the better it tastes. But yeah, from what you're explaining, yeah, I've always wondered as well, like if that's always the case, but it doesn't seem like that's. It's
No,
just yeah, because yeah, it's as you said, there are very many nuances about why a bottle is priced the way it is, and that doesn't always mean the more expensive it is, the better it is, or the
no,
older it is, the better it is. Yeah,
no.
so I think those probably are like the two biggest myths about alcohol in general, and maybe whiskey. Like, oh, the older it is, the more expensive it is, it's gonna taste great.
That
Um,
African people and marketers started that. The amount of time I go to African party and somebody is flexing on his friends and go, "Oh, I bought a 21-year-old," and somebody, one day around some African friends, somebody brought a 21-year-old, and us, yay, yay, this is the shit. I pulled the bottle out after he served the 21. And I said, oh, I got this bottle, and it's a black bottle, so you can't even see what's inside. And I just poured to everyone, and everyone go, oh my God, this is the best thing. Jack, you always have the secret things. I bet this is the most expensive thing I've ever tried. And they kept going. And then I stopped all the guys and I said, hey guys, can someone guess how old this whiskey is? Everybody, no one gave me anything under 20.
mm,
No one gave me, every single person said 17, 20, 25, 24. Everybody went on a thing. And I looked at him and I said, it's a 5-year-old whiskey. And their jaw dropped. The reason
yeah.
why is because age is irrelevant if the whiskey is made well.
I love that. That's a good quote for the podcast. Age is relevant as long as the whiskey is made well.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's not. That's. I've learned a lot about whiskey today. Thank you so because again, whiskey is not something that I drink like often. So I've always been a little intimidated because people are really into their whiskeys,
Oh,
and
they
so
are.
it's always like I've never really known like okay like oh if I bring you a Jack Daniels is that oh you only like cheap whiskey or if I bring you I have to bring you the Glenmorangis or the
Correct.
Glenfiddiches
Yep.
it's like is that because I've never really known like oh should I get the 21-year-old 80 so I've learned a lot this makes a lot more sense and it's opened my eyes to saying okay let me actually try a different because I didn't even know about Japanese whiskey.
Oh,
I didn't even know about that.
if you're someone who
So
doesn't like, I remember I went back home in 2022. And a lot of people are like scared, right? They're like, oh, I don't want the hard liquor anymore. I don't want all of that thing. Japanese whiskey culture actually is not around, Japanese people, their culture is more around cocktails than drinking neat, actually.
mm,
There is a
mm,
type of cocktail called a highball. Highballs are
yes, I
made a
think I've heard
lot
of
in
that.
Japanese culture because it's
Mm,
only three ingredients. a sweetener. It could be honey or, a simple syrup, sweet, something sweet,
Mm-hmm.
some whiskey, and literally sparkling water. And that's it on ice. That's it. That's literally it. So those type of whiskeys, those type of whiskey work perfectly. You someone who doesn't like the hard thing. I went back home. The amount of people drinking in India, same thing. People would drink whiskey with sparkling water on top of it. The reason why is because they're soft, very citrusy, lemony whiskey. Lemon forward, very white, kind of pear and apple forward. So they make their whiskey very fluffy and light. So if you have a Japanese whiskey, if you used to hard liquor, you can. I went back when people are drinking more Japanese whiskey because they're like, Jack Daniel, too harsh, too harsh. I don't want this. I just want something. It's hot in Africa. People want something
Yeah,
light. So
exactly.
highballs, I think now, they using, as sweetener, they using his hibiscus juice, or some people are using some, what do you call it? Some sobolo. Some people are using like our baobab tree, the
Mm-hmm.
lime, the limey nut. People are using those things as to make their using Japanese whiskey. It's light, it's easy.
Oh,
People can drink it for a long time, so they don't actually have to feel like I have to spend this much money for that. So it's a thing now. So I tell people,
okay.
if you're someone who was intimidated by hard liquor and that, there is a whiskey, a Japanese whiskey made by Centauri, cheap, $19-20, called Toki, Toky, Toki. Go grab one. It's very light. Look almost like water in there. Grab one and pour yourself one on ice. You can thank me later. Is
Yeah, I
little
was actually saying, yeah, like I want to try a Japanese whiskey, given our conversation, because like I like it light. So Toki, so
Toki.
just Toki and ice.
Toki on ice. That's it. Like a
Okay.
friend of mine, I remember my best friend. We used to have a podcast in the past called "A Day in the Life of an Immigrant," and that's the only bottle I will always bring for us to drink. And since then, he always tell me he's very big into working out. He's like, I can't drink anything, even vodka. I get away from it, but I got my Toki. I got my $20
Mm-hmm.
Toki. I have it on ice when I feel like something, and that's it. He swear by it.
Huh? What's the percentage on it?
I think the Toki is only I'm pretty sure I don't want to misquote it, but Toki Japanese whiskey is only two. I think it's four. Japanese whiskey have to be a minimum of 40% alcohol,
Oh, okay.
so it won't be more than that. So their whiskeys are all 40% alcohol, and I will tell you is 43% alcohol. That's Toki.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
Toki.
No, I'm gonna try it.
Toki Centauri whiskey, Japanese whiskey, is the whiskey used the most in the world for Japanese highballs. And if you have it on ice and you still feel like it's a little thing, get yourself some club soda or sparkling water. Get yourself something sweet like your favorite sweetener. It is honey or is simple syrup. Have 1 part simple syrup, one part whiskey, and pour on top.
Wow. Okay. No, that's awesome. No, I was once I have it, I'm gonna send out. I'll tell people what my experience was. And like, guys, you need to get on this Toki. Well, Jack, I think actually I think that's a good place to end the episode. I think that was a very informative. Honestly, this was very educational for me, and I hope that for the people listening out there, this was also very educational for them because, again, you have a wealth of knowledge in whiskey. So for anyone who's more interested in finding out about, because I know right now you're doing your 30 days of whiskey,
Of Irish
so I know
whiskey.
that
Irish whiskey.
of Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
Yes, 30 days of Irish whiskey. So if anyone's interested in learning more about Irish whiskey and your daily uh, you know, your daily posts. They can find you on Instagram at Hood Sommelier.
Yeah. Hood underscore
So
sommelier. Yeah.
yeah, Hood underscore Sommelier. Yeah, they people can find you there and like, because I've been following it. I'm like for the last few days, and I'm like, wow, I'm learning already from from the conversations you have and the posts you make, and it's making me like, oh, I really want to try this weekend. So yeah, if anyone's interested, find him on Instagram. Uh, he's got a lot of knowledge on this. I'm pretty sure he's one of the best in the business when it comes to whiskey. I would say. But
I'm
yeah,
flattered.
any
I'm
any
flattered.
any last words from you,
Um,
Jack?
I will tell you right now. Don't like you mentioned. Don't be intimidated by the word of whiskey. Because it's a very open and inviting word. You just have to be willing to take a step into it. And my best advice to everybody: don't run and go buy anything expensive.
Hmm.
Buy what's affordable first, because you have to start from the bottom to go up. If today you find a 12-year-old and is affordable to you, buy the 12-year-old first. Try it. And also, don't just try your whiskey one way. Whiskey is not meant to be only drink neat. Everybody go one neat. Have it on ice. Have it with a splash of water and see what works for you.
Mm.
And what I say and my motto when it comes to whiskey is for everybody. You, women,
Mm.
men, regardless of your sexuality, regardless of your origin, whiskey is for everybody. As long as you're old enough to drink it, try it. It doesn't discriminate. So if somebody make you feel like you don't belong, or they drinking whiskey and you feel like you're not there, there is a space for you in whiskey. If an African immigrant kid like me can try and impose myself in the world of whiskey and educate folks, I want to see more people like me do what they do.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, definitely. Whiskey is for everybody. And with that, thank you so much, everybody, for listening in. And we will catch you on the next episode. So thanks, Jack.
Thank you.